Hi, I'm Reid, Executive Director of the National Lighting Bureau, and we're broadcasting from the studio of one of our sponsors, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in Washington, D.C. We are here for the 10th Annual Lighting Forum, and I am joined by Scotty Hutto, Business Development Manager, SESCO, Michael Davidson, Lighting Control Specialist at Synapse Wireless, and Paul Drosen, the GM of the DALI Alliance. The name of this panel is titled All Things DALI. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, thank you for coming and for being here and helping our audience learn and help me learn about DALI. Paul, let's start with the definition. What is DALI?
So DALI is a digital addressable lighting interface. So it's a standardized, globally standardized digital bidirectional communication bus between lighting control devices.
Tell us the difference between DALI and DALI2.
Okay, so it's fairly simple. DALI is the original DALI. It's the protocol that everybody knows and understands. It's the language of lighting, if you will. And DALI is the overarching term for everything DALI. And then DALI2 is a certification program. So what we did was we learned from the market, we tightened up the specifications, the testing, and we moved from a kind of a self-certification system to a independently verified and certified program. So everything has to be tested and certified to deliver that interoperability promise that that DALI is known for. So that's the key difference between DALI and DALI2, is that DALI2 is actually a certification program that builds on that.
Okay. So I was at an IALD conference last year, and there was discussion from a major lighting controls company, and he said that they've never embraced DALI, but he really likes DALI2, and they're going to do a lot with DALI2. Why is that? Why was the first DALI never really accepted in the U.S. to much extent, and DALI2 is being accepted?
I think that's a little bit about timing. Maybe it's a little bit about how the organization was back in the day. So we're talking about, probably some decades ago in terms of the first foray of DALI in the US. And my opinion is, obviously I wasn't with the organization then, but my opinion is that probably some people tried it. It was challenging compared to what they know. Maybe they found it difficult to implement, and then probably the organization that supported DALI was very European-centric at that time, and didn't support them through those challenges well enough. And so with DALI2, you have this more robustness in terms of the testing, the interoperability promise, and now we've grown as an organization. We're in a much better position to invest and support the US. So I think those combination of factors.
Okay. So Scotty, you're formerly with Georgia Power, and that's where I've known you for many years. What benefit does DALI bring to the utility aspect?
Well, the big thing is when we started looking at how to do controls and how to do LED lighting, was we wanted interoperability, not just a one-way communication. We wanted to be able to send commands to the fixture, but also get data from the fixture. As we started discussing it, before we even discovered DALI and what that was, we had this concept in our mind that we wanted it to be like a USB printer, where you plug it in, it tells you who it is, and then it works. And through our conversations with the DALI Alliance and learning about DALI, we figured that was the best way to achieve the bidirectional communication we needed. A side benefit of that was also that the controllability of the light was much more robust than with 0 to 10.
Okay. So, as a controls manufacturer, Michael, how does DALI help you with what you're doing?
Well, I think the key pieces are what Scotty mentioned, is the plug and play aspect. so you can take drivers from different manufacturers and get the same results, then also there's a lot of value hidden inside that driver. With that two-way bus, you're getting information like power monitoring data. You're getting asset data, when it was made, the features of that device, and the cream to cream is the diagnostic data. So those are things that we're trying to provide customers with their own controls. So we moved to the DALI2 and D4i, all that was built into the driver.
Okay, when you say diagnostics, can we get into predictive maintenance? Can you tell when something will fail before it fails?
Absolutely. You can tell that there's too much current, too little current, and you can start seeing when the LEDs are failing. So if you have a 200 watt fixture and all of a sudden you're 150 watts or 100 watts, you know that fixture's dying. There's something wrong with it. It needs service, needs replacement.
Okay, very good. So please, Paul.
Yeah, so I would just add to that, the other thing you can do is you can review the runtime, so the amount of time that the LEDs, for example, have been on, and you can make an estimate, when they're likely to fail, and therefore you can preempt the failure, and you can plan your maintenance before the device has actually failed, which is super, super convenient.
Sure. And again, a lot of times they don't fail, they just depreciate.
Right.
So you can look at the number of hours that they've been operating as well. So Michael mentioned D4i. So explain to our audience, now that we understand DALI and DALI2, what is DALI D4i?
Okay, so D4i is DALI2. Okay, that's the first thing. So with DALI2 is a system, and the features within DALI2 are optional. So it's like a pick and mix. You choose which features meet the application. When you're making a building, you want different lighting to do different things. Maybe you want color tuning or emergency. You don't want that in every luminaire, right? You just want it in those luminaires that are doing that task. So that's DALI2. D4i is based on DALI2. It's the same certification program, but it has a mandatory minimum set of features which also include power. So you've got the data elements and power.
Okay.
And that gives you the plug and play capability that Scotty was talking about in terms of the instant, you plug in a node and connect it to the luminaire, and straight away you've got that interaction with the connectivity, whatever you're using.
So it gives you the plug and play, but when you mention power,
Yep.
it can tell the power that is consumed, and that's very important for utilities, correct?
Yes.
Well, what I mean by power is that the power supply comes from the driver that's inside the luminaire.
I see your point.
So D4i is an interconnect system. When we say plug and play, obviously you need the data, so it needs to be able to communicate with the driver. But it also needs to get its power from somewhere.
Right.
And it gets its power from the driver, which obviously is converting AC to DC anyway. So that's kind of...
In the old days, there used to be a separate power module that had to be used, and that took space in the fixture that the fixture didn't have, and of course it also cost.
Yeah.
I understand. So use the power of the driver that's already there.
Yeah.
All right, but to the point that I misunderstood, though, you are measuring power, and that is important to the utilities for load shedding.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It's important for load shedding, and in the implementation that I'm familiar with at Georgia Power, we actually used it for metering. The device was
And
metered.
I want to understand that. When you say you use it for metering, so you don't need a meter. Nobody needs to go and read a meter. You don't need the meter. You can just look at the DALI data and bill the customer from that.
That is correct. It's a certified meter. It has to be tested like any meter would be under Public Utility Commission guidelines.
Okay, sure.
And the accuracy has to be within their bounds, but it can be used as a meter.
And I would think the accuracy would be greater than a meter.
In some cases, yes.
Okay.
I was just going to add, for power monitoring, it's hard to save energy if you can't measure energy.
Right.
And so we have a lot of customers who are using strategies once they understand which luminaires are on at certain times. they can come up with strategies like with motion sensors, scheduling, dawn to dusk. And so with these methods, they can start saving energy. We have customers who can save over one mall $1 million a year by putting strategies in like timeouts on motion sensors at 15 minutes instead of 20.
Right.
So there's a lot of things you can do if you know that power. Also, that helps you with the diagnostic piece is just seeing that if none of your luminaires are at the right power, something's wrong. It could be the power coming in. It could be something with the LED board. It could be the LED driver. So it gives you a lot of information having that power monitoring on board.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the control receptacle configuration and what do you see end users in North America adopting for sensor-ready luminaires when needed? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I can jump in. So in the area that I'm familiar with, which is outdoor lighting, we're seeing almost exclusive use of the 7-pin receptacle, also known as the ANSI C136.41 receptacle. And that's typically used for photocells or network lighting controls. And that's typically on the top of the fixture. On the bottom of the fixture, we're seeing the Zaga Book 18 receptacle, which is used
Which is
for
4-pin,
sensors.
is that right?
It's 4-pin.
Okay.
And it's used for sensors. We're starting to see utilities use that, require that on luminaires. And they buy it with just cap, but it gives them the availability to add sensors to that fixture later. So if you've got a D4I certified fixture that has the DALI2 driver, the Zaga receptacle, and the 7-pin receptacle, then you have a wide range of sensors and controls you can use on that fixture.
So Paul, this question goes to you. We understand what DALI is. We understand about DALI2. We understand DALI 4i. When I saw you at the NY Controls Conference, you were talking about something called DALI Plus. Now, what on earth is DALI Plus?
So, you know that DALI is a wired bus. It's a wired technology, and DALI2 is our certification program for wired devices. DALI Plus is DALI without the wires. It uses a wireless carrier. For anybody that cares about these things, the underlying technology is Thread.
Is what?
Thread.
Okay.
It's a system called Thread, which is IP-based. And it simply uses that as a carrier to carry the DALI commands and data wirelessly from one device to another in a mesh.
Okay. And I'm going to show my ignorance. Is it using a radio?
Yes.
It's using a radio.
Yeah.
I interviewed Mark McClear last week, the new CEO of Kasambi. He talked about having a radio in every fixture. And I just said, come on, Mark. And he said, think back about 15 years ago when he told me LED would be in every fixture. And I just said, no way, no way. And look at where we are.
Right.
So maybe again, I'm wrong here too. Could there be a time when we see a radio or a control in every fixture?
I don't know about every fixture. So the thing with luminaires is that until someone invents a power source that's nuclear fusion in a box or something, then it's unlikely that you're going to do away with wires completely. So in a new build, it's typically easier and cheaper, actually, to install wired systems.
Okay, back up. I don't understand that. Because I thought wireless would be less expensive because you don't have the wire and you don't have the labor. So tell me how wired is less expensive in a new building.
Well, you have to run the wires anyway, right? So you have to get power to those luminaires. And one of the beauties of DALI, the wired part of DALI, is that you can run the, depending on local regulations, you can run the power and data cables, alongside the mains cables. So when you're running cabling, instead of a 3-core cable, you run a 5-core cable, and you've got the DALI data bus, alongside it. And that's typically in Europe, as I say, subject to local regulations which vary. but where it's allowed, that's typically what happens.
Okay. Is that allowed in the U.S. to do the 5-core?
I'm not familiar with every rule in every state, so,
Okay.
so I don't know.
Let me just kind of start from my viewpoint. You know, wireless, especially in applications like outdoor lighting and warehouse lighting, it's much more economical. For outdoor, you just think about running a control cable separately from the AC cable.
Right.
You know, that's going to bring a lot of, you know, extra wiring, digging up the pavement. So outdoor, it's just almost impossible. Indoor, you could possibly do it, but if you look at warehouses today, they're constantly reconfiguring. You know, the
Okay.
shelves are moving, you know, manufacturing facilities are like warehouses. They're moving equipment all the time. They're not encumbered by the wires. So now they could just, you know, draw a circle on the screen and they've got a new group. They got a new zone.
Right.
So in those situations, like warehouses and outdoor lighting, it's much more economical to go wireless.
Okay. Paul?
So
Please.
the outdoor thing, I entirely agree. Indoors, it depends on the application. I think if you're talking about a very large facility, then yeah, maybe it makes sense. But for room-based control, then running the wires, as I say, you have to run the wires for the luminaires anyway. So adding an extra pair for the data set, it usually makes sense. So my opinion is that actually in the future, all buildings will have a mix of wired and wireless. There are significant advantages of wired control. It's very robust. The grouping thing, one of the advantages of DALI is that actually you can change the configuration of a room, the grouping, the scenes, all of these things. You can change those in software. So you don't have to rewire everything each time. So that is one of the beauties of DALI. So it's less of an argument, particularly in a building inside. Outdoors, I entirely agree. Wireless absolutely makes sense. It's probably the only way, really.
Okay. So, Scotty, let's come back to you in your current role with Cisco as a very large and dominant manufacturer's rep here in the U.S. How do you see DALI controls in your day-to-day business?
Well, we've got several major utilities that have used DALI controls for years. We are starting to see more uptake. One of the largest utilities in the eastern side of the U.S. just recently made the decision to go to DALI. And it's for those reasons we were talking about, the accuracy of the dimming. If you're going to dim for energy conservation, you want accurate dimming, DALI provides that. If you're going to do adaptive roadway lighting, you've got to be accurate if you're going to comply with IES standards for lighting. You've got to know that fixture is dimming to the level that you know. With 0 to 10, you get dimming, but based on the control voltage and the parameters of the driver, of the 0 to 10 driver, you may or may not be getting what you think you're getting out of that fixture. So for adaptive control, you really want to do that. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, the plug-and-play capability, the diagnostics. So on my central management system, I get a report back that we've got a fixture that is not performing correctly. Well, in the utility world, what you see is the labor to change that fixture is usually more than what the fixture cost. So that allows me to say, oh gosh, this fixture at 123 Main Street is not behaving properly. I can roll a truck that has that exact fixture because with DALI, I now know exactly what fixture that is that's not performing.
Okay, sure.
And I can roll a truck that has that fixture. If it's something that they can't fix in the field, which I tend to think of many LED lights as kind of like your TV on the back where it says not user repairable. They're not field repairable. It's not practical from a labor standpoint to do that. You can swap.
Although it might be from an environmental perspective.
Correct. You can swap the fixture out in the field and bring that fixture back and then bench test it and repair it.
Okay, got it. Repair it back.
At a repair facility.
Okay.
Yes,
That makes sense.
because of the equipment involved and having to go up 20, 30, 40 feet in the air to repair a fixture in the air is not always practical. Bench repair is usually
Okay.
practical.
So please.
I would like to add to that is before you roll that truck, you know exactly which fixture you have to replace it with, because there's Memory Bank 0, which has all the information on the drivers. So that's important, the configuration of that luminaire. Also, on Memory Bank 1 has all the information on that luminaire. You know, the SKU number, the color, CCT value, it has everything baked in there. So now you know, you don't have to go back and go to purchasing and say, hey, which fixture's on 123 Main Street? It knows exactly what it is and you're going to know what to replace it with before that truck rolls.
Okay. So please, Scotty.
And the ultimate, even carrying that one step further as a manufacturer's representative, in those memory banks, you can have the born-on date of the fixture, if you will, so you even know whether it's under warranty or not before you go change that fixture
So
out.
let's discuss this data. Who owns the data?
That's a great question. And the end customer owns the data.
Okay.
And lots of times, you know, the end customer will allow somebody that's doing repairs for them, like a third party, have access to that data. But that data belongs to the end customer.
Okay. Do we need to worry about litigation? So there was an accident and the lights were out, and the plaintiff's attorney could maybe subpoena the data from the utility that shows this light was out. They knew it, or they should have known it, and they didn't repair it within 24 hours. Is that an issue?
It depends on where you are. So in some states there are laws that cover utilities and municipalities and DOTs that say, you know, once they're made aware of that, they have a certain time period. And as long as the fixture is repaired within that time period, then they have no liability. A good example of that would be Florida has a law such as that. What you'll find is that utilities, municipalities, DOTs that have those type laws make a very concerted effort to ensure that those fixtures are repaired within that time frame once it's known. And it's a very reasonable time frame.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Do we ever think about DALI as a service? So instead of selling DALI, you're leasing DALI, and somebody is getting recurring revenue?
We're seeing that model in like areas like sports lighting, where we're using DALI and providing services like different features, like, you know, paparazzi effects or color. So as time goes on, there's more features they're going to want. So they pay, you know, a premium
Interesting.
for those extra features, and it's on a subscription basis.
Okay. Please, Paul.
Those are, you know, there's a difference between DALI as a system or a certification program, which is what the DALI Alliance provides, and what Michael is talking about is products which are manufactured by our members. And obviously, you know, how they sell, they go to market is dependent on their own particular, you know, market approach. So we don't dictate that. I think DALI could enable some of those things, but it's, you know, selling DALI as a service is something that I can't really see, because, you know, our service is the certification and you know, the testing of the products. So,
And if I may, your income from the DALI Alliance comes from where?
it comes from the members. So
Okay.
in order to use the DALI trademarks, which include the words and the logos, legitimately on products, they have to be members, they have to test and certify and list those products in our database.
But there's no licensing fee.
There's a membership fee.
There's a membership
membership
fee.
fee, and then there's a small administrative fee each time they submit a product for certification.
Okay, so that makes sense. But again, there is no licensing fee. If a company sells 100,000 units, they're not paying a dime per unit to DALI.
No,
And I think that's a huge benefit of
Correct.
DALI.
Yeah. Well, hopefully our members agree.
Okay.
They seem to, because as an organisation we're growing. When I joined the Alliance some just short of five years ago, we had around 170 members. Right now we have over 370 members. So we've grown rapidly over
Okay, and
those
if I
5
may
years.
ask, what's the breakdown between the U.S. and Europe? Just ballpark.
Very few of those. It's hard to determine because you take some of the organizations, they have European operations.
Sure.
Their headquarters might be Europe, but they have a huge US presence as well. So I'm not sure how you would
Right.
determine, the only thing we see is where the headquarters that signs up, whatever they put on the application form. So
Understand.
it's a little bit hard to determine. Anecdotally, I would say the mix is relatively small in North America, predominantly Europe, and a large number or growing number in Asia.
So just
Michael?
to add to this conversation is the power of the diagnostics. We were running some tests for a customer. We put in a beta site. The customer came back and said, "Why is this light running so hot? It's going to burn up the LEDs." And we went back and looked, and it was programmed wrong. The wrong current was programmed into the driver.
Okay.
So having these diagnostics, we can take steps to preserve those lights. And also, we know how to save energy. We know what's there. Everything's smart today. You got a smartphone, you got your microwave that does all kinds of crazy stuff. Your refrigerator tells you,
So basically, it's
Yeah.
preventive premature failure.
as well as just information's power.
Right.
You got information, you got power. You know when a light's out. You know when you have a safety issue. So just the information is valuable. It's powerful.
It does make it look almost archaic when there used to be forms that you would fill out for a large company. Oh, the light is out above my desk on this floor, that sort of thing. Or the homeowner would report to the utility, well, here's my address, and then there's a light that's out. And then, of course, the truck would go during the day, and then they've got to determine, well, there are 3 lights on this street. Which one is she or is he talking about? So I do think, I sure do understand that. Okay, Scotty, closing comments?
So, again, from my perspective, having roughly 10 plus years experience working with DALI, and the evolution of DALI to DALI2 and now D4I, also having had experience on the manufacturing side and now as a manufacturing rep, I do believe DALI is the future of lighting. And I've always liked to use the analogy that buying an LED lighting fixture with an analog controller is much like buying a 85-inch flat screen TV with an old 13-channel tuner. You can do some stuff, but you cannot take near the advantage of the entire capabilities of that product unless you go to the digital world.
That's a great analogy. Okay, closing comments, Michael?
I agree with everything Scotty said. Is we just have to realize lighting is so important. And as we're at the point of where we start adjusting brighter light, softer light, harsher light, glare, we have a lot of power to understand what we're putting out to customers, when it's going to fail, how long it's going to live. I mean, light's essential. So we have to control it better than we've been controlling it in the past.
Very good. Paul, closing comment.
Closing comments. The future is bright. The future is digital, globally standardized controls. I believe, obviously I'm biased, but I believe that DALI is the answer to that. All around the globe, it's used. It is the dominant, control protocol that's used in lighting anywhere around the globe. And I think with DALI Plus, just to close out the wired versus wireless argument, you have that flexibility that every building in future will have hybrid. You'll have new builds which will be predominantly wired and have the wireless for flexibility where needed. And you'll have historic buildings which will be refurbished or retrofitted, which will need more wireless because obviously you don't want to run wires everywhere. But they'll still need some wired capability. So I think the future is, and I believe that the only one that can support that is actually DALI, whether it's with wired DALI, DALI2, whether it's individual luminaire level lighting control with D4I, or whether it's with wireless with DALI Plus. From a specifier's perspective, all you need to do is say, I want to use DALI in my building to future-proof it, and then you use the relevant part of DALI to fulfill the application.
Okay, makes sense. All right, gentlemen, thank you.